Welcome back, friends. This is the Mass Effect Lorecast. I am your host, Tom or Robots, and I am here as usual with N7 the Legend. Sam, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I am back and I'm feeling better than I was. Not 100%, I think. I had a pretty strong headache today, some other stuff, but I'm so ready to dive into this first episode about Cerberus.
Yeah. So for those of you who are tuning into this episode after the fact, we had to delay this episode a little bit. So thank you for your patience. This usually gets recorded on Sunday night. So this is now Wednesday night. So, some health things I get headaches. I guess Sam gets headaches. Everybody has health things. We decided to delay the issue a little bit. And as we were discussing in the pre-show conversation, Sam says that he thinks going over these notes a little bit extra the last few days is going to turn this into a better show than it would have been. So I'm interested to see where the conversation goes. So why don't we just dig right in? Because this is Cerberus, but not all of Cerberus, because that would be a huge conversation, right? This is just the origins.
Yeah, that's right. So we're diving into the factions of Mass Effect. We're talking about what groups influence the galaxy, where deals are made, where power resides, really, in the Milky Way. And when we talk about those things, we have to discuss that there are none shadier than Cerberus.
Yes,
right?
They're like the power broker of the Mass Effect universe. I've been super into Marvel stuff lately, and that's kind of what I think. The behind the scenes kind of shady group,
They are so shady. I think that there's no better word to describe Cerberus than shady. Maybe militant too, but we'll get into that a little bit. For those of you who are new to the series, Cerberus is like if you had a rogue private military company, and that PMC had both the significant financial backing and a supremacist ideology that justified using force for political gain. And I'm pretty sure that I just described terrorism verbatim.
Yeah, I'm thinking to myself, this has never happened. Oh, wait, yes, it has. This happens all the time in reality. Okay, yeah, so we got a pretty clear sense of what these guys are about already.
Yeah, definitely. Technically speaking, Cerberus is merely a private organization, but it has its tentacles in like everything.
Tentacles.
From writhing tentacles in everything. From frontier exploration to intelligence operations, from political lobbying to research and development. I mean, seriously, these guys are in everything. Cerberus actively arranged terrorist activities, sabotage operations against alien governments, and assassinations of even the Pope. All in the name of humanity first.
So what I love about this is that they're going they're super new school. They're like, we're going to assassinate aliens because that's pretty freaking awesome. And you know what? We're also going to go old school too. We're going to go medieval and assassinate a pope because that's totally awesome. Also a thing that is very historically accurate as well. Because there were definitely shady organizations and power plays historically where people would assassinate popes. So
they got one hand in Star Trek, they got one hand in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, totally.
With Cerberus, it's just all over the place. They are the eschatological smorgasbord of villains here.
Eschatological smorgasbord is now one of. I need to add them to our band shirt, which is up on the store.
They're a scat band.
Yeah.
They're a scat band.
Oh God. Okay, I need to not do that. Okay, so where are we going from here? I'm now completely off track.
So humanity first. I think a good way to we've thrown around a lot of really heavy, $10 words like eschatological and private military companies and shit like that. It's just basically kind of like Tesla teamed up with Blackwater and then adopted a Fox News worldview.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
Which is pretty fucking scary, but just to think about that.
Yes.
And, for those who are listening at home, I when I was doing this, I thought, hey, create your own sci-fi shadow organization. Here's a fun and scary game to play. Just if you can make a mashup, all you need is, which combos would you never want to see? Basically, you take one tech company, one super powerful finance powerhouse, what I mean? And then you add a shady organization to it. Or you could get a little bit more fun. Like I have a few that I was writing down. For example, how about Amazon and the KGB?
Okay. All right.
Delivering neurotoxins right to your door.
Or you could just mix the letters around and have Amazon and the KFC, and they could just be chopping off the heads of people like chickens.
And then mailing them.
And then mailing them to their enemies. deep frying their enemies and mailing them without heads.
How about Chuck E. Cheese and Google? I don't even know what that would look like. Maybe the robot critter band knows your search history or something.
Yeah. Okay. Chuck E. Cheese and Google. It's like automatronic search engine that actually physically goes around and searches for things for you, but it's super creepy and the eyes move weird. It's like robots that look like creepy automatronic entertainment creatures. Ugh.
I'm terrified just thinking about it, to be honest. I think, I also had another one. How about Facebook?
Facebook and
on second thought, they're good alone.
Facebook and Facebook. That's
Facebook and itself.
Facebook and itself.
That's where we're at as a society in real life.
I think that's that's all you need is Facebook. So, okay, back on topic. So how did this militant research group even rise to power? And on top of that, assassinate a pope? I mean, where were they before we met them in the games?
There's this interesting timing here, considering what spawned the creation of the Alliance and its recognition as a political entity. Of course, we just talked about that last week and the week before that. To answer your question simply, the First Contact War. Remember how we talked about the general level of fear and anxiety among humans when they realized that they weren't alone and that aliens were a threat? Right. Well, capitalizing on and weaponizing that fear is kind of the entire basis for Cerberus's success.
Okay, so that's the whole Fox News part of this, right?
That is the Fox News part of this. Yeah,
we're gonna get angry reviews on this episode for sure.
Well, whatever. If they don't like listening to us, they can switch over to Fox.
Side news: anybody who actually legitimately listens to Fox News and doesn't realize that so much of the content on there is about like making you upset and worried about things going on in the world. I mean, that's all that we're saying here is what they're doing, right? They're capitalizing on public fear of stuff. And that's and to be let's be 100% fair. Many news organizations do that.
Yeah, they're not the only ones.
They're not the only ones. We're just picking on Fox because it's easy to pick on. But this is something news organizations are known for because it gets clicks, it gets views. And so to be fair, this is a news thing in general.
And more specifically, cable news thing in general. So we'll be fair about that. So cable news thing in general, you could throw CNN under the bus as well. So we'll just be fair about that. Yeah. And so right after the First Contact War, an anonymous manifesto is published on the Mass Effect version of the internet. It's called the extranet. And this manifesto effectively warns humanity of an alien deep state secretly plotting and maneuvering toward a human genocide.
Okay.
It, along like many other manifestos, was a call to action. And the author fomented this fear and called for a human army, a Cerberus, to guard humanity against the impending alien invasion through the Charon mass relay. Hence where they got the name Cerberus.
Okay. So, but to be clear, humanity had the Alliance at the time already, right?
Yeah, they did. So they did have, an army willing to defend them.
Okay.
But apparently the Alliance wasn't willing to do what needed to be done. or go far enough to defend humanity.
Right. It was easy to probably like throw them under the bus and be like, oh, well, they're not good enough, so we need to do what they're not willing to do because they're not really going to protect us from the real enemy because they're not even aware of what the real, it's that whole conspiracy side of it thing to motivate the public.
Right, exactly. I'm imagining in the Mass Effect universe, conspiracies were running amok. The Alliance is in on it. The Alliance is part of the deep state, or the Alliance is just so inept and ineffectual, or that they can't do anything,
or they're too close to the aliens, or the aliens are actually controlling them secretly, or who knows? I mean, you could come up with anything, and I'm sure there's an Alex Jones in the future that was actually throwing that stuff out there, and people were believing it. Yeah.
Cerberus is very much InfoWars. That's a good way to put it. So, let's veer off of Mass Effect course for a second, because I think relating this to what we've seen in history, it doesn't just help us understand how some crazy shadow organization like Cerberus could conceivably gain so much of a following, but it really is important that we stay vigilant for some of these signs that seem to be happening around us, like even today.
Okay. Yeah. So this sounds a lot like a lot of the rhetoric that we get from, dictators in our own world, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the tried and true formula for autocrats, right? There's a series of things that like if you're writing a playbook, there's a series of things that autocrats usually do on their rise to power. Mm-hmm. They delegitimize existing public institutions, i.e. the Alliance.
Right.
They fabricate a crisis, i.e. human genocide. They create a faceless, omnipresent enemy. Aliens, literally anyone who's not humans, right?
And a problem that can't really be addressed, so that it is always a problem, so that they always maintain power.
Right. Not a clear objective.
Right.
In addition to that, they scare the shit out of people. Because that's kind of key. You got to scare the shit out of people.
Right.
And then call to raise my own army to defend against the fabricated crisis that I've made, because I alone can fix this.
Right. This formula has been very well documented. It was a formula that Nazi Germany had used. I'm sure there are echoes of this even from revolutionary times in France. Napoleon was probably using a very similar rhetoric during the revolutions in Russia. There was probably very similar rhetoric. And then you look at there's even echoes of this during multiple different times in American history, where we claim the communists are going to come get us and we have to stand up against them, or the terrorists are going to come get us and we need to stand up against them. There have been many times throughout our own history and many other histories in the Western world in just the last 200 years where this formula has been tried and in many places been successful to varying degrees. Probably the greatest known one would be Nazi Germany, which is extremely scary, but it also creates a template for future organizations to use against an unwitting public who is easily manipulated due to fear.
Yes, and not only manipulated but isolated. Yeah. They, when you can convince a populace to be afraid of something, they don't think rationally, first of all, and then second of all, they more willingly give up their freedoms to external sources of information. So, and if you can do that, if you're an autocrat and you can get a population to only rely on you for the narrative.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You've won.
Because you're the only one they can trust anymore. Right.
You are the only one, and anyone who agrees with you is the only one that they can trust anymore. And by the way, if anyone below you falls out of your grace, they're a traitor. They're with the enemy.
Exactly.
You can't trust them.
You can flag them as being, yeah. Huh. This seems very similar to other things more recently happening in the world, but we're going to leave that to your imagination. All right. Well, this is a wonderful start because I know people are like, oh, you guys go into politics too much sometimes and yada, yada, yada. But this is amazingly prescient. Is that the right word? For things that currently go on in the world and have historically gone in the world, and create a foundation for us to understand how a group like Cerberus could come to power and be as effective as they are in the Mass Effect universe. Like, I think there's a core to really understanding this. Otherwise, you look at a group like this, if you don't understand how powerful this kind of rhetoric is, this manipulation of the populace is, then you don't understand how a group like this can actually be this powerful. Because you put them next to something like the Alliance and you're like, well, how can a little group of, just this little group become so behind the scenes powerful? How does that even make sense? They don't have the wealth of nations. They don't have the ability to get their message out as easily as everyone else. But really, it's through these methods, and these methods are tried and true, and they work, and they're extremely scary. And this is the foundation. That's why we're harping on this for so much in this section of the episode, is because this actually works. This is how a little known artist in the 1920s and 30s goes on to become the dictator and almost take over the world in Central Europe in the 1940s. Like, these things actually work. So
it is predicate to some of humanity's greatest atrocities.
Absolutely.
It is
absolutely
like the worst levels of violence against innocent people that the world has ever seen were predicated by this, because it almost always devolves into a free populace, just dissolving themselves of power,
right,
and giving it to one person,
and good people unwittingly doing terrible things for what they think are good reasons,
because they feel threatened, just like the people in Mass Effect. Human beings, anyway, in Mass Effect must have felt threatened by the Turians upon first encountering an alien species, and then all of a sudden, their planet, Sanshi, their colony, is now invaded.
Yeah.
It's occupied.
Yeah. Shang the movie?
Shanxi.
The Ten Rings?
I think I'm pronouncing it right. Shanxi, probably in Pinyin.
Are we back in Marvel areas? All right. Well, well, this was a good start to the episode, and we have some reviews to go over and some patrons to thank. So we're going to transition into the middle of the episode. Where are we gonna come back to after the break?
So when we come back, we're going to be talking a little bit more about exactly how the proper organization, Cerberus itself, was formed, and where. I mean, it's a pretty big jump to go from this idea posted to the extranet to this shadow terrorist organization. So we'll talk about exactly how they got there.
Awesome. All right, we'll be right back.
Message coming in. Patching it through.
I am sovereign, and this station is mine. I like the sound of that.
All right, here we are in the middle of the show, and our mysterious benefactor from last month, we put out a ship design contest, and that didn't really take off. Get the ship take off. That was my little joke. So we're going to retool this ship contest and come up with something else for this month. Tossing around some ideas. I need to get back in touch with them in order to find out exactly what we're going to do. But we may double up the reward to 2 people who can join us at the end of this month. So stay tuned for that. We will have some more news for the next episode. I will get back to you guys. But we will have a new contest that I hope more people will want to be involved with, because a lot of people are involved in the first one, not so many involved in the ship contest. I think maybe that was just a little bit more than what people were really had any ideas for. So we're going to go with something else different for the next one. But stay tuned for that. Also, thank you to our 41 patrons. Holy moly, man, oh man. And our Shepherd tier patrons, Pipe Man, Sovereign, and Stagger and Stumble. Thank you to the 3 of you guys. And to all the 41 of our other patrons, if you are interested in helping to support the show, if we've done anything to help you get through your workday or your workout or your drive to work or washing your mother, then, man, that's gross. But please check out patreon.com/Mass Effect Lorecast for all the different tiers and all the different rewards you can get, including t-shirts and stickers, which were added just recently. So check all that stuff out. The t-shirts and sticker designs are very limited edition. They will go up on I think they'll be out by the end of November, early December, for people who were patrons when those first went up like a month ago. And so you should start getting those. They go up every 3 months for people as long as they stay on the tiers that they're at where those get rewarded. And every 3 months, another one goes out, and then they're gone. They're out of the list of designs. They will never be up on the store, and you can't get those designs ever again. So they're limited edition, only for patrons, and our way of saying thank you so much for continuing to support the Mass Effect Lorecast. So thank you so much to everybody. Go check that out. And we've got some reviews here. These are some beefy reviews. We've got one from Lord Tizer, who is in chat right now. Let's read this out. Lord Tizer from the United States says, I am Lord Tizer, and this is my favorite podcast on the Citadel. 5 stars. Tom and Sam create a positive, upbeat atmosphere in their podcast to discuss the nuances of the Mass Effect universe while adding a touch of real-world comparisons and ponderings. I have enjoyed content from robots way before the world pandemic and pervasive hate that has permeated this world as of late. With so much negativity in the world today, I am glad to see the Robots Radio Network continues to be a beacon of positivity and fun while bringing us information on the games and content we love. Listen to this podcast. It will be worth your time. Lord Tizer, thank you so much for that review. Wonderfully said. We really do appreciate it. And then we have one from Antoine Don 56 in the United States, who writes, amazing! 5 stars. This is a long one. Buckle in. I'm going to do my best to get through it as quick as I can. Seriously, love this podcast so far. In my opinion, the original Mass Effect trilogy is the greatest story ever told in any form of media throughout human history. That is absolutely high praise for this trilogy. That's how much I love this series. You guys adding the extra depth to this amazing world and lore has been extra refreshing. I have replayed the trilogy annually every year since Mass Effect 3 released in 2012. I was trying to hold off on my 9th annual playthrough until I could get a next-gen console, but I just downloaded the Legendary Edition last night to my PS4. I have started this pod from the beginning and have been binging to catch up to the current releases. Your thoughtful presentation has added even more depth to an already amazing story. I will say that I have only been disappointed by one thing, and that was your first episode in discussing whether or not Shepard is alive or dead. They flat out told us at the end of Mass Effect 3 that Shep survived. The final cutscene features an old man and a young girl in a field off in the distance, and the little girl asks the man to tell me another story about the Shepard, to which he replies, okay, one more story. They wouldn't have put this in unless Mass Effect 4 wasn't going to feature Shep. Mass Effect 4 meaning the sequel to 3, not Andromeda. You only get that scene if you choose Destroy and Shep survives, but I could be wrong. I don't think this definitely decanonizes Synthesis and Control, but rather that if you choose Synthesis or Control, the Reapers win. I say this because if you control the Reapers, I think you choose to give into indoctrination. You should definitely do a pod about the indoctrination theory. If you choose Synthesis, the Reapers win by eliminating organic life. Either the Reapers win. Mass Effect 4, in my opinion, to me, will follow the life of Shep after Destroy and basically state that choosing either of the other two was what the Reapers wanted, and in doing so, the Reapers find a way to continue the cycle. I also believe Mass Effect 4 will canonize the indoctrination theory, which is my sincere hope for the franchise. Anyways, love your work and hope to listen to much more content. Wow, what a well thought out review and interesting theory here on the way this could go, huh? Antoine, thank you for the review, and thank you again, Lord Tizer. What do you think, Sam? We might have to address that on a future episode because that's a lot to unpack.
I think we will. And I've heard indoctrination theory mentioned a lot of times. I think it's definitely something that is divisive. A lot of our listeners and the Mass Effect community as a whole feel very strongly about it. I know that from the Discord that we run. But I do think that, first of all, I want to say thank you to Lord Tizar and Antoine Don for the stellar reviews, pun always intended. And I also want to say, Tom, I think Antoine Don may have sidestepped our episode where we had a patron chat asking them what they thought about the endings. I think he sidestepped that and just said, you know what? I'm just going to throw it in a review. They'll read it that way.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so.
Yeah. But nevertheless, I really do appreciate that. I love how I'm not the only one like super into this series. It feels good to be surrounded by people like that. So
yeah, absolutely. And before we get back to the rest of the episode, big congratulations to Sovereign, who won our Mass Effect trivia show last week. We shipped out the reward, and Sovereign posted some pictures up for everybody to see, which was super cool. The what was that called again? The words fall out of my brain. That was
called the Medal of Valor.
Medal of Valor, and it looked really cool. Like, it looks cool in the images on the website. You know how whenever you look at the images on the website, they're like professionally shot and everything. You're like, oh, it looks nice. And then somebody takes a picture of it when they unpack it, and it like all of a sudden it looks real. You know, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that looks really cool.
It looked heavy and substantial.
Yeah, I was like, wow, that looks so much better than it looked on the website. But you also get a sense of like how big it actually is too. It was really cool. So congratulations again. That was awesome. So here we go. Let's finish up the episode.
Spit it out, or are you trying to build suspense?
You're so dense, sir. Obviously, I do not know as much about human relationships as I thought.
All right, so we left off talking about the ways that extremism takes hold and autocrats use people's fears basically against them. So how does this continue to play out in Mass Effect as it, has to do with Cerberus?
So that kind of brings us to the events of the Turian occupation of Shanxi, like I mentioned. And there are 3 human mercenaries that are assisting the Alliance. There's Jack Harper, Eva Corey, and Ben Hislop, and all 3 are so crucial in the way that humanity will develop because of Cerberus. All 3 of these mercenaries serve with General Williams, who may sound familiar to a lot of people because General Williams is Ashley's grandfather. This is the same General Williams who surrendered his garrison at Shanxi, who incurred such a huge burden and stamp of shame for all of humanity. So this is a really critical time before Shepard is really even on the scene in Mass Effect 1. And so after capturing a Turian general while assisting the Alliance, the mercenaries become totally engulfed in this general's conspiracy to use an ancient artifact to transform the Turians into a race of invincible super soldiers. Of course, under his control. Of course. Also, and it's got kind of a really cool sound to it. Yeah, you got to give it that, at least. All of the Turians now become invincible super soldiers, and of course, if you're a human, that's pretty fucking scary because you're currently at war with them. Right. That sounds pretty badass, but okay. Yeah, and of course, and it doesn't stop there. It turns out that the general, his brother, is Saren Arterius. So Saren Arterius is the same Saren from Mass Effect 1 and Mass Effect, the novels, of course, if you've read those. Saren actually aids Harper, Corey, and Hislop in trying to foil his brother's plot of using this ancient artifact to transform the Turians. But in the process, Corey and Hislop die. So this leaves only Jack Harper, who comes away from the mission no doubt scarred, and he takes away this cynical worldview. Maybe we should say galaxy view. Right. Okay. From his encounter with the aliens. This is what he comes away thinking, basically. The stars, were warm and welcoming, right? Full of places to explore, adventures, knowledge, riches, but humanity won't always be welcome. And those that came before us won't always be willing to share what they know. That is just the way of things in the universe. That's what Harper thought. These were words that were told to him from the Turian general, Decius Arterius. Mm-hmm. And they kind of echo in his mind, and they haunt him for a long time afterwards. Harper knows that a dark time is coming, or at least he thinks he knows that a dark time is coming for humanity. And humanity will be tested, in Harper's opinion. He's so sure that he can see this in the future. And while humanity may not know who's doing the testing or why. They must meet the challenge as humanity has done every single time in the past. We're getting into serious Benito Mussolini territory right here.
This is like I am the only one who has this foreknowledge, and I must be the one to act on it. This kind of stuff, right?
Peace is war, and war is natural, or some shit like that. I don't know, some nonsense. But humanity must succeed in Harper's mind, because doing anything else would be inhuman. Right, because human beings have never fucking failed. We know that. Right. But I get that ideology. The ideology is basically saying that at every turn, humanity has found a way to survive. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here.
We wouldn't be here then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Therefore,
all of this
everything
seems
we've
kind
done,
of just like, duh. You know, like, I mean, let's back up a little bit real quick. The stars were warm and welcoming. No, they weren't. Full of places to explore. Well, yeah. And knowledge and riches to be had. Sure, potentially. But humans won't always be welcome. No shit.
Right. Like,
at what point in human history has exploring foreign lands with other inhabitants have the explorers ever been just welcome?
In Miss Trombetta's first grade recount of the Pilgrims having Thanksgiving lunch.
Yeah, the Pilgrims and the Native Americans who back then probably were taught to us to be called Indians, which doesn't make any sense. Where everyone just got along, and the Indians helped make food for the Pilgrims, and like. No, that's not how like it's like he grew up with a fourth grade worldview, and then all of a sudden as like a 35-year-old adult was like, wait a minute, the world is more dangerous than I ever thought it would be, or the galaxy in this instance, you know, we must do something about that.
He has romanticized everything a lot.
Right. And so the pendulum is swung all the way to the other side. There's no balance in this thought.
I think that's funny, right? Because he's like a grown up, and he should have come to terms with a lot of the harsh realities of the world sooner. But the thing is that we have to keep in mind, at this point in humanity's development in the Mass Effect universe, everything has happened so fast. Humanity just found this, trove of data on Mars, which allowed them to travel way farther than they ever thought they would. Like, I imagine in humanity's mind in the Mass Effect universe, they kind of wrote off interstellar travel completely in their mind, because they're like, that's so far in the future. I'm not going to have that. My kids aren't going to have that. Like, not even going to think about it.
Right. This is generations away. We don't even need to worry about that as even a concept yet. Yeah.
Right. And then all of a sudden, 2148 rolls around. They find the Mars archives. They find all this data. Now they can use mass relays. Now, all of a sudden, they're going to different parts in the galaxy instantaneously. They're finding these untamed worlds that don't have any sentient life on them that they can just take for theirs. And it's all very exciting, right?
Sure.
So this is this new wealth of resources and land and possibilities for humanity. And this is the environment that Harper grows up in. This.
Yeah.
And so then he's faced with the Turians, of course, in the 2150s. 2157 is the First Contact War. He's working as a mercenary, and maybe he didn't grow up in this environment, but he certainly matured in this environment of limitless possibilities, manifest destiny.
Right.
But he notes that this dark time is coming, and he says, that he alone, here's this, I alone can fix this. Jack Harper says that he will watch the dark places, that he will bring these dark places into the light. He says there's no magic, only technology and tools that humanity can and must master or control. A theme very prevalent in Mass Effect, control. Not just to survive, but to improve humanity. So there's the human supremacy aspect. Humanity can and will take their rightful place in the stars. This is like identical to the manifest destiny ideology.
Oh, very much so. Yeah. Yeah.
The white man's burden. This is like identical. It's right a page out of the playbook.
Right. Right. In other words, it doesn't matter who we have to step on, murder, or steal from. we deserve what we can take, and we're going to take it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it kind of, I thought about it when I was putting together these notes, and I had a few questions that even I didn't know like the answer to. I couldn't find the answer to, and I think that there might not be an answer, not in the lore anyway. I think it's just things that we should probably discuss as a community. Could Harper's dealings with Saren have polarized him? Because think about this. Mm-hmm. Jack Harper dealt with Saren Arterius to try to take down Saren's brother, the Mad General who wanted to make the invincible Turian soldiers, But we all know from Mass Effect 1 that Saren hated humanity. And like he despised humanity. He's
a very polarizing figure. Absolutely.
Yeah. He wasn't easy to get along with. Certainly not if you have skin like a human.
Sure.
And so my question kind of to the community is, could Harper's dealings with Saren have polarized Harper? Could it have pushed Harper farther to the edge that, kind of isolated him in his own mind that all aliens are these assholes that we will never get along with, and, humanity must survive. Or did he get the idea that all aliens hated humanity as much as Saren did? And vice versa. Did Saren garner a stronger hatred of humanity after witnessing what an asshole Harper was and his staunch human supremacist outlook?
I think that there could be a lot to that. I mean, imagine a series of conversations between the two, and maybe one with Harper saying, "Oh, this galaxy is a wonderful place. There's so much to explore. There's so much good out here," and Saren already being anti-human saying, "You humans don't stand a chance. We're going to eat you alive." Like this kind of rhetoric, and him overplaying the power of, not only his race, but the other races out there that the humans haven't even begun to deal with yet, and trying to scare the bejesus out of him. And then Harper pushing back and going, well, we're just you haven't dealt with humanity before. You don't know what we're capable of. And then that creating this two opposing forces that just,
Yep. What happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object, that kind of thing.
Right.
So basically Jack Harper goes on the extranet one day and he publishes this anonymous manifesto. And you can see where I'm going with this. I'm bringing it full circle, like I told you I would. Mm-hmm. His critics deride it as merely the ramblings of an elusive man. And thus Harper takes on the mantle of responsibility, as he would say, for protecting humanity. And he dons the identity of the Illusive Man. And he forms Cerberus as a vehicle for recruiting an army to advance human-only interests.
So it's so he didn't give himself the nickname then, which is kind of, I mean, at least he's got that to his credit. Because it's super lame to give yourself
his own press releases.
He does that, but at least he doesn't give himself. It's super lame to give yourself your own nickname. Like he does, it's like he was just like sitting there in the corner going, nickname. I need a name to go. The Illusive Man. That sounds mysterious. Let's go with that.
The Frightening Man. No, too on the nose.
The Spooky Guy. Oh no, the Mysterious Son of a Bitch. No, nobody will take that seriously. The Elusive Fellow. Oh, I like that. No, it's close. I don't know why he's talking more and more in a strange accent, but so at least he's got that going. But so how did Cerberus grow from some extranet post and these like little rambling manifestos to become what it is? Like what was that path?
Yeah, well, it turns out that, Harper touched on a very real fear that many humans held. And that's kind of another key for dictators to rise. There have been so many manifestos that have been put out there and then they just die because they were unrelatable. You know what I mean? But this manifesto touches on a very real fear that humans have all across the galaxy, across colonies, on Earth. And it's that aliens could betray them. So humanity needs to grab what it could, when it could, and become strong enough to withstand any attack.
Which is, I mean, there's truth to that.
There is, but I'm immediately like recalling some political speeches in recent history to my mind.
Sure. I mean, there's also danger in that as well. You know, but that's why these kinds of messages can be so dangerous. There's wisdom in this as well as folly. There's both. If you do this too aggressively, then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you don't act on it, then you're not ready to respond when inevitably an alien force tries to take you down, because the universe is not going to be filled, of just benevolent alien beings that just want to welcome us, in and offer us, a seat at the table, because that's not going to happen either. The truth is somewhere in between. So you have to do it delicately. That's where, that's where it's more than just, approaching everybody with an armed rifle comes in.
Yes, exactly. And so much of how people treat us is determined on how we present ourselves. So I'm glad that we're covering the ideology, the counter ideology to the aliens ideology of why is humanity such an aggressive expansionist asshole, right? Yeah. Because we talked about that so much in the beginning episodes of the series, This is the Volus's perspective on, how the hell did humanity get an embassy so soon? And why so many alien species were resentful of humanity. Well, this is the counter ideology. This is the human extremism ideology of, well, we need to be, or else we'll get nothing.
Right. Right.
And so, there's a way to do that diplomatically. I will say that there's a way to do that diplomatically, to extend an open hand and keep an armed gun behind your back, and some of the galaxy's diplomats do that, but not the Illusive Man, not Jack Harper. No. So his ideology, it turns out, resonates with a lot of people. But the name Cerberus really first appears in the headlines when an Alliance cruiser, the SSV Geneva, is the target of a failed piracy attempt. Armed men storm the vessel and they try to steal antimatter, which is ship fuel. And they make ship fuel from that. And when they're caught, all of them die except for one. And this one guy, when he's asked who he works for, he only says one word: Cerberus.
Pizza Hut.
No one out pizzas the Hut.
No one out pizzas the Hut. What? And everyone was very confused after that.
Total legend, that one. No, he says Cerberus. And get this, that happens in 2165. That's only 8 years after the First Contact War. Meaning that Harper spent all of that time, all 8 years, gathering resources, personnel, trend planning to pull off an operation like this.
Right, but it failed.
Yeah, it failed.
It didn't work.
It did. Cerberus did fail on that operation. And yet the media attention drove recruitment sky high.
Huh. So, I mean, I guess it's odd. I mean, that they say that nothing's bad press, right? Like, no press is bad press. But you would think an organization like this failing at that would be bad press. But maybe even the attempt was more than what most people thought they would be capable of. And that by itself was inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, they're pulling off a pirate attempt. Well, they're not pulling it off. They're executing, I guess, a pirate attempt on an Alliance vessel. And so I'm imagining if this happened today against a U.S. Navy vessel, and then all you hear is just some mysterious one-word answer, "We work for Cerberus," your first thought is going to be, who the fuck is Cerberus, right? So then you might Google that. You might search the extranet for that.
Right. And then you're like, oh my God, there's a real three-headed dog out there somewhere. Yeah.
You might come across a manifesto. And then when you come across that manifesto, you read it. Maybe you think, this actually doesn't sound so crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of, we have these pirates, these terrorist attacks, these horrible things happen in real life. And when they receive media attention, when more people hear about them, it inspires, for lack of a better word, it inspires other bad people to commit similar atrocities. I mean, this happens with school shootings, right? We've heard some shooters have been influenced by the actions of other heinous people.
Right. No matter how poorly it ends up for them, there's still something inspirational about it, which doesn't rationally make sense, but to somebody who's, I don't know, in that space emotionally, somehow that resonates.
I think there's a certain level of wanting to be a martyr with it.
Yeah.
Because it's romanticized. But, so then I guess my question is the morally correct thing for the media, and I put the media in quotes because let's be honest, that collective term, the media, doesn't make sense. So is the morally correct thing for the media to stop reporting on things like this?
Right. Well, no. Well, I mean, obviously that's not true either. That's not good either. Because then people don't. I agree.
I say no.
Right. It's better to have information than no information. It's best to have accurate and truthful information than false information. And, that's what I would say. So no, I mean, we can only make decisions based on the information we have and the accuracy of that information. So it's always better to have more information. And just because a small percentage of people are going to use that information inappropriately doesn't mean the majority are still going to make good decisions based on that information. I think there's a greater good to be had.
And even if you're, putting accurate information out and no one at all is listening, that doesn't mean it's pointless. It doesn't mean it's pointless at all. In fact, the duty of news media is to keep the population informed, like you've said, good or bad. It doesn't mean that, when the event is bad, we don't inform them of it. That's not news media's job. That's so outside of ethics, the ethics of journalism, to determine this is in a, you know what I mean? So
right. Yeah. Okay. So good stuff. Nice little segue. Obviously you can tell that you have some experience when it comes to journalism.
Just a little.
But so let's get back to Mass Effect. So where does Cerberus go from here? What do they do with these new, I mean, they're not really recruits. They're just like interested individuals, right?
Yeah. They're prospects. And I think that the Illusive Man, being a clever individual, would probably use them as best as he could. Even if they didn't want to sign up and wear a uniform, he'd find some way to use them as an informant or, I don't know, suicide bomber or something. Nothing is off the table with him.
Spreading information or misinformation.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
And media manipulation was one of the main categories of operations that Cerberus was involved in. But just 5 years later, 5 years after this terrorist or this piracy attack on the Alliance vessel in 2170, Cerberus carries out another attack on a much, much bigger scale, although it's dismissed as just a tragic accident. In 2170, an Eldfell Ashland energy vessel explodes in the planet Yandoa's atmosphere, exposing the entire human colony to dust form element 0. Now, as some of you may remember, humanity had its own EZO accident on Earth years and years before, and for most it resulted in total tragedy. Children dying of cancer, people with failing organs, you get it. But there were very few who didn't receive negative consequences, at least not totally negative. Some who were exposed in utero to element 0 grew up to exhibit stellar biotic abilities. This is the case for Kate and Alenko, and it's heavily implied that this is what happened to Commander Shepard if the player chooses that Shepard has biotic powers. It's also the case for Jillian Grayson, who was born on Yandoa and exposed to that element 0 while in the womb. Jillian is autistic. She's one of the very few autistic characters in the series. And she's also a gifted biotic, arguably a savant. She's kidnapped as a baby and given to a Cerberus agent who, quote-unquote, adopts her I refuse to acknowledge that that's a legitimate adoption. But he adopts her purely as part of his mission, which is Cerberus uses Jillian to infiltrate the Alliance's Grissom Academy for Biotics. So let's wrap this, bring this full circle. You have Cerberus that arranges an accident where an energy vessel explodes over the planet Yondoa's atmosphere, exposing the entire colony to dust form element 0. Now, all of a sudden, you have some people who were exposed in utero to element 0, and some start exhibiting biotic tendencies later. And Cerberus just so happens to kidnap one of them as a means to infiltrate the Alliance's Grissom Academy for Biotics.
It's almost like a forced evolution experiment thing.
Yeah, it's experimenting on people. And if you ask Cerberus, the Illusive Man would probably say they exposed so many people to element 0 on purpose to better humanity. That's how Martin Sheen would say it. and give more human beings the tools they need to defend themselves from the alien menace,
Right, right.
But in reality, it was a terrorist attack, which undoubtedly would have resulted in death and terminal illness for many, many innocent people. And it's followed up by 2 similar accidents in other colonies in the 4 months afterwards.
Yeah. Whenever you take somebody else's well-being into your own hands and their own control out of their hands, then there's definitely moral issues with that. So, okay, so this all makes a lot of sense. But we still haven't talked about the Pope. So
that's right. Yeah.
So what about the Pope? Where does the Pope come in?
I brought up the Pope earlier. Yes. Basically, a year after these accidents happen and expose other colonies to element 0, Pope Clement the 16th is assassinated with rosary beads coated with toxic materials so that he can be replaced by another guy who has beliefs more in line with Cerberus's goal of militarizing all of humanity.
That's man. So the Pope, it's kind of funny that the Pope still had that much influence that he was a target. I'm not assuming that religion goes away or something, but that for some reason in this situation that I guess Pope Clement was a very vocal person against what was going on in order for him to be targeted like this. And so they were he's making too much of a stirring. He's really pushing people against us. We got the Pope,
This is at the same time that Cerberus is leading assassinations of political leaders in the United North American States, I believe it's called. So nothing is out of his purview. Everything's on the table when it comes to achieving his singular goal, which is what he says is the improvement of humanity. But let's be real, it's the improvement of humanity as defined by Jack Harper.
Right. His version of improvement.
Right. And his version of whatever the hell humanity is.
Because he's changing it. He's turning people into biotics.
Right. And he's also killing people along the way. So he doesn't love humanity that much.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's kind of the deal. That's how Cerberus becomes what it is. They get their start with piracy attack here. People hear about it. They start flooding to Cerberus in numbers, Googling. So I don't know what Google is in this universe, but looking up Cerberus, finding their way to the Elusive Man, he puts them to work.
Yeah, strangely enough, it's actually AOL Online again. It's they go away and then they come back.
It's a total cycle.
Yeah.
After these new numbers, they are able to ramp up their operations to these massive terrorist attacks, which are, affecting entire worlds by blowing up ESO vessels in the atmosphere. And then they're assassinating the Pope, and then they're assassinating high level politicians. And they're gaining more and more infamy as this is going down, right? Mm-hmm. And everyone knows what Cerberus's manifesto is. So they're gaining more and more of this population that is so scared of aliens that decides, you know what, maybe these guys can make a difference.
Right. Maybe they can protect us with their murder.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of the origins of Cerberus. I think when we come back next week, which is actually not next week, it's just Sunday.
Yeah. It'll be soon.
When we come back Sunday, we're going to be continuing our factions episodes with another chapter of the Cerberus episode, where we're going to be talking about their notable operations, including Project Lazarus and the structure of Cerberus as an organization.
Awesome. Sounds good. This episode, if you are watching live right now, we'll have this up tomorrow because it's late. I'll just put it up for everybody tomorrow as soon as it's edited and ready to go. So if you tuned in a little bit late and you're waiting to get the beginning of the episode, don't worry, it'll be up very soon. Also, if you are listening at home or in your office or in your car or whatever, and you'd like to tune in, our live shows are usually on Sunday nights at 10:30 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/robotsradio. We'd love to have you in chat. I love all the comments and things in chat. It's always fun to see you guys in here. So thank you for joining us. Sammy, you have anything else going on? I know you've got that new GPU back in your system. It's worked for this whole stream. You didn't dip out on us. Everything's going well. You going to be playing some games?
Hell fucking yeah, I'm going to be playing some games. I am so excited to. God knows it's been so long. I've been waiting for this PC, of course, and then the PC came, and problem was with the GPU. Then I had to wait another 3 weeks for the GPU to be solved. I am so ready to jump back in some games, and not the least of them being Mass Effect. I'm going to be streaming that now that I have a ton of additional streaming capabilities since I'm playing on PC, and I can make the streams much more interactive. Ooh. And hey, look at this, I can actually appear on camera and I'm in space, and that's pretty cool. That's a lot more fun to look at. That being said, if people would like to connect with me or watch some of my streams, go ahead and just type in N7 the Legend is fucking awesome. No, I'm kidding. N7 Legend on Twitch. And it's virtually everywhere else as well. On Instagram, on Twitter, in the Discord, it's just N7 Legend. And I will love to chat with you while I'm playing some games. And if you'd like to co-stream some multiplayer games, I have been chomping at the bit to play some Battlefield.
Ooh, yeah. The beta is out this week. The open beta starts the 8th. So that'll be up for everybody. If you pre-ordered, you can play the open beta now, the 6th and 7th. The 8th, it's open for everybody. 8th and 9th open beta will be up for everybody. So I'll be playing on the 8th. I don't think I'll be pre-ordering unless I just give in and my weakness. I just okay, fine. I'm just going to pre-order because I'll probably just buy it anyway. So we'll see. Also, Back 4 Blood, it comes out on the 12th. So that's next week. I'll be playing that as well. So if you guys want to get together and play some of that, kill some zombies and things, I'll definitely be doing that next week. And I've been streaming in the morning. So this is what I've been doing the last 3 weeks. Every morning starting at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, which is super early Sam's time, Pacific, but in the mornings until about the middle of the day. So come hang out with me. Sometimes I'm editing podcasts, but lately I've been playing some games and things, hanging out with people. So I'd love to see you guys. I've been thinking about doing some really spooky games too, being that it's Spooptober. So that might be fun. I don't know. We'll see where that goes. But that's what I got going on. But you guys know how to get a hold of us and all the other shows at robotsradio.net. We've got all sorts of other shows for you to check out. If you're into any other RPGs, there's a bunch of lore casts like this one, many of which I host with other hosts, and there are some on the network that our other hosts do as well. So go check those out and come join us on Sunday night. And then when we do the next episode and we wrap up the rest of the Cerberus stuff and the Illusive Man. I think they should have had a different voice actor who sounded a little bit more creepy like that.
Like Burns from The Simpsons?
Simpson, eh? Simpson. Who is this Simpson? Yes, that would have been, I am the Illusive Man.
Arguably, I think Martin Sheen did the best.
He was good
in all of Mass Effect.
He was good. He is very notable. He's got a very, obviously it's him when you hear him, but he also, when you hear him in the games, you're like, yeah, he's a good character, like right off the bat.
Oh yeah, and he just brings such life to the Illusive Man's character, especially in the final scene, Mass Effect 3. Not going to spoil it for anyone, but if you need a little refresher, don't hesitate to look it up. Of course, there's spoilers, but Martin Sheen's performance in the final scenes of Mass Effect 3 is so fucking good. It really brings the series to a close.
Yeah, we've had so many like A-list stars in recent games. Something like Keanu Reeves and Cyberpunk 2077. That you don't generally think about games going back a decade ago having these A-list stars doing voice acting, but we did. And
yeah, Mass Effect was one of the first, big, I say big, but Mass Effect 1 wasn't like a big name when it came out. It wasn't hyped a lot.
But by 2, it was, everybody knew what it was. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Right. And even in Mass Effect 1, Martin Sheen may not have been part of the cast, but Keith David was.
Yeah.
Courtney Taylor had not yet joined the cast, but Jennifer Hale was, and she was a big name in the industry.
Right. Right. But not having been known as an actor outside of voice acting, but to bring in somebody who was, a screen actor who had been in lots of things and notable, like somebody you see and go, oh, that's Martin Sheen. Like you just, a name, was incredible for 10 years ago.
He's unforgettable.
Yeah.
He's unforgettable.
Yeah. Well, very cool stuff, guys. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back again next week. And as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts on some of the stuff on the Robots Radio Discord. So come join us and chat on there. We're going to head out. It's getting late. We'll see you guys next time. Stay safe in the universe and don't do anything weird and creepy with, cult followings. All right. See you guys. Bye. Thanks for tuning into the Mass Effect Lorecast. We'd love to hear your opinion and thoughts on the lore of Mass Effect. Reach out to us on Twitter at Mass Effect Cast or check out the Robots Radio Discord. Also, you can send us an email at masseffectlorecast@gmail.com.